This is the 117 Podcast with your host, Rafael Hernandez.
Welcome, everyone. This is Rafael Hernandez, and I'm here with FCB historian for the second episode of the 117 Podcast.
Hey, Raf. Nice to be here. I think there's plenty to discuss after this interesting turn of event. The floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, this podcast, we are going to divide it in three segments. The first one, we are going to discuss a bit more about the Messi interview and his attacks on the club, on the board, actually. The second one, we are going to talk Ansu Fati. It's inevitable after that performance against Ukraine. And the third segment will be about the signings and how the club is pushing the players out rather than negotiating a friendly exit. So, beginning with Messi, I think that by now everyone has already watched the full interview, and it's clear that the man wanted out. This hurts us a lot because he's a Barcelona fan as much as we are. He loves the club, and the best thing about the interview, even better than his actual attacks on the board, was Messi clarifying everything. He showed us that Bartomeu lied many times, and it's clear that Messi was in the right all along. Of course, most of us trusted Messi, and others actually question Messi's loyalty, and that is honestly ridiculous, even more now that we have already looked at the interview.
Yeah, you've nailed it there. I think when you look at the broader picture and when you see how divided the fan base was on certain issues, there was still 100% behind Messi in terms of his stance regarding Bartomeu. And even though he didn't really say it outright, it was clear that he's obviously had enough with Bartomeu. And the most glaring aspect, that sort of stuck out, was the fact that he obviously bashed the board for the lack of planning. Obviously, there was no clear direction in terms of how the many signings that they made were going to be integrated. And I think since 2015, the club had signed somewhere between, I think, I don't have the exact figure, but I would say 30 players. And I think only a handful had actually had an impact as far as building a proper team goes. And it's only, I think it's overdue. The fact that Messi is now fed up. I would have liked him to kind of clarify or clarify his stance and really more and say that these obviously had it, but that he tried, which is what he said in his defense. But I think most of this stuff could have been said after the Roma match. I mean, that's how I feel about it, to be honest. But what do you think?
Yeah, Messi just said what we were thinking for the past 3 years, that the club is directionless, the sporting planning is non-existent, and Bartomeu is managing to make things worse as he goes along. And this situation is bound to get even worse. I'm not talking about success in the coming season. I'm talking about institutional the institutional rot that is wrapping Barcelona with. Will take a long time for the next presidents to fill it up, to actually correct all of the mistakes, because you basically have 6 years of Bartomeu ruining everything, dilapidating the club, and making Barcelona weaker on the markets, weaker financially, and weak. And the most important part, I think, is how Barcelona is seen right now, because we have seen the club become a joke. We have seen it on the internet, we have seen on radio, we have seen on TV shows, and I think that hurts a lot most of us. There's no other way around it. Barcelona have a long way to go, and Messi, and knowing that Messi basically said what we were all thinking, I think it's the biggest praise for the Barca captain, the Barca legend, that we could ever imagine. He's connected, and he lives the everyday life of the club as much as we do. The only difference is he chose to stay quiet until now, and now we are seeing that he is one of us. I think it's the most important part, because all of us love and admire Messi. And
Absolutely.
yeah, when you get to the point that you see, okay, not only we admire the guy, but he also sees things that the same way that we do. Yeah, it's amazing. It was great to see Messi speaking out. He was fighting for
Absolutely.
us.
Yeah. Yeah. And people like, I mean, well, a few opportunistic accounts on Twitter saw fit to bring up Puyol, who was an excellent leader in so many ways. There's little doubt about that. But really, just to sort of bring Messi down by saying that, oh, these debacles wouldn't have happened if Puyol had been on the pitch, is actually really, it's as big an insult as it would get, really, when you look at Messi, and just really to appreciate the style that Messi or Messi's style of leadership, which doesn't really sit well with many people. But I feel like the way that he went about it was really calm. The way that he really held his own during the interview, and even though you could see it on his face, it was written all over his face. Like the guy was like absolutely depressed, and you could tell that he'd had enough, and that the only way forward was for him to leave the club, and rightly so, and he's earned the right to sort of move on. But really, I mean, Messi isn't the vocal type. Messi's the type of guy who leads on the pitch. Like, really, give him the ball, and he would change things in your favor. I mean, if you think of the Paris Saint-Germain game from 2013, when a sort of limping Messi came onto the pitch, and and everyone was basically, everyone there was the impact of this was still remembered very, very fondly by fans, because as soon as even Messi with one functioning leg, he was able to kind of like change the tide in our favor, and we went from being sort of pinned down by Paris Saint Germain to kind of like grabbing the sort of much needed equalizer, which took us to the semifinals. But then, I mean, when you think back, and when you think at how, when you think about Messi in general, and how he carries himself, he's not your sort of traditional kind of like leader in that sense. And I think that's really unfair to kind of apply that sort of or to box him like that. Really, it's I think takes away from his brilliance. But again, I mean, I think he's had enough, and it was clear. And I mean, one criticism that I might have really is the fact that it was long overdue. Maybe he said, I think maybe after the Roma match, I think his idea was to sort of, pick himself up and try again. And then I think Anfield was the sort of like last nail in the coffin. And then everything after that was basically just him walking through the motions. And he was still brilliant, but again, against Bayern, you could see that he was just really far removed from everything that was happening around him. And it wasn't just like this result did not happen in a sort of vacuum. I mean, we'd already seen, or we'd already experienced the debacle in Roma, and then the one in Anfield. So obviously, at this point, this was pretty much, you know, it was I don't know, it was in the script, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. And when you think about everything that has happened with us, it was really coming. And I completely agree with the fact that it was overdue. Everyone would have been happier if Messi had spoken sooner. But as you said, he's not the kind of player to simply go out and lash out against the board. It's very rare for any kind of footballer to actually attack the club that he is currently employed. We've seen many.
Yes, yes, and that's a common, like, sort of common misconception that players would sort of go out of their way and then, like, sort of demand, that a president resigns, or that, like, a coach steps down or whatever. I mean, that's just really unheard of in modern times. But yeah, there are other more sort of, like, less straightforward ways of, like, rebelling against the club. But you know how much Messi loves the club, so he's not the kind of player who would, like, sort of get his panties in a twist and about anything. He'd just carry on, I guess.
Yes, he would never. And Messi is a club man. He's Barca through and through. And for those that had any doubts, except for each other, to each one of us, to to know deep inside what we were thinking. So, aside from the Messi interview, let's talk a bit about what might happen in the future. Is Messi going to leave next January? Is he going to leave next year? Right now, it's too difficult to say. We don't know what's going to happen on pitch, how the club is going to perform with Koeman. We don't know how bad or what Bartomeu might do in the coming months to make things actually worse, because we all know that he is capable of that, honestly. And
Mhm.
you have Manchester City lurking too. Manchester City will still want to sign Messi, especially on a free. And next year too, we're going to have clubs starting to recover from the pandemic. So we might see much more than Manchester City going for his signing. We might have many other clubs fighting for his signing. Not at the same. I wouldn't say that they're going to do. Any club will be willing to pay Messi what he earns at Barcelona, even if it's Messi. And we have seen before some quite reliable claims that Messi would be willing to earn less to leave Barcelona. So Messi was never going to leave for money. And for those that kept insisting that Messi was just trying to pressure the board for another renewal, that's absolutely nonsense. We have seen the man during the interview, and he was miserable. You can see that Messi is sad. He's upset with the situation that he finds himself into, and the club too. So right now, I don't think that we have time or the patience or the focus or the time to be focusing on what's next for Messi. Let us enjoy his what could be his final season at Barcelona and hope for the best, hope for titles.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And when you consider his age as well, he's 33, obviously, and he's a father of three kids. Obviously, I would go out on a limb and say that his wife wasn't particularly looking forward to leaving Barcelona. And obviously, I think he mentioned kids were actually unhappy about leaving, and that's their home. I mean, I think they were born in Barcelona, and I think they love the city, and they're not so keen on leaving. And obviously, that can be sort of a sort of obstacle to his departure. And I think, I'm hoping that obviously, Bartomeu, or whoever is one of his weaklings, who's going to end up running, or one of Sandro's weaklings, will get voted out in the next elections, and we'll have a candidate that will treat Messi with the level of respect that the club legend deserves to be treated. I mean, I don't think that's asking for much. What do you think about it? But yeah, I mean, that's how big of a sort of joke that the club has become. But when you think about that, and if Messi was given even the slightest bit of reassurance, then yeah, I mean, I think he'd see out his contract, and he'd basically just stick around, and then obviously just I don't know, retire in Newell's or in Argentina. Even though that's far fetched, I think we've discussed that before. I don't think that's really like gonna happen. But yeah, I think he's gonna end up staying if the next president really just shows him a little bit of respect. Really, that's all that's needed. And and if Koeman, and I think that's highly unlikely, but again, I'm being pessimistic. That Koeman really establishes himself and lays the foundation for something for something great. But again, given his track record, and given his I mean, when you look at the rumors regarding the signings and the kind of players that is after, it's not as like doesn't really paint a nice picture for the future. But I mean, crazier stuff has happened before, so it would be difficult to make predictions as of now. But I mean, really, given our recent history, I mean, I think it's just it's been one disappointment after another since the treble. So
Yeah, no doubt about that. And our motto for the upcoming season will have to be hope for the best, expect the worst, and let's get on with it. Let us enjoy Messi's final season if it's going to be.
mhm.
If it's not, we are going to have even more fun actually watching him, thinking that he's gone. Maybe we will even give him more respect, more value, because sometimes we think we take Messi for granted. I know this is kind of crazy to say, but honestly,
Yeah.
when you look back, few players will ever reach his level. Maybe no player has ever reached the level that he has in terms of consistency. And most importantly, and one of the reasons that I'm happiest that Messi stayed, is Pele's record. Messi just needs to score 10 goals for Barcelona this season to finally get to break Pele's record. And I know that I was one of the first people on social media to be hyping the Messi record, even when he was like 150 goals behind Pele, because as a Brazilian, and when it comes to Pelé, everyone says he's the greatest ever, and all of that, and people keep insisting on that. And I don't think it's quite that clear. I think it's quite debatable, especially when you look at what Messi has done for the past 15 years. So you have this record, and Messi could yet erase another one of Pelé's records. That would actually please me greatly, to be honest.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, imagine Messi might actually finish the season for Barcelona. Let's say that he scores only 30 goals this season. He would actually finish his Barcelona career with over 560 goals. It's for a single shirt. It has never been achieved in football history. There's a lot of weight. There's a lot of respect to that record. I would say it would be the second greatest record that he has after the insane year where he got to over 90 goals in a year. When just saying that, it's silly. What a record.
It is. I mean, really, I think there's no debate really regarding who's the greatest of all time. And really, when you look at how well-rounded and how intelligent Messi is, and how much of a great team player he is, overall he lifts his team. Whether it's just creating chances, whether it's just opening, making insane runs, and cutting the ball forward, and doing all these amazing dribbles, and insane stuff that even after 16 years of watching him day in, day out, or week in, week out, he still manages to surprise you. And that, I think, this is one the most underrated aspect of Messi is this his ability to kind of like, when you think, whenever you think that you've seen it all, he comes up with with another trick, or he comes up with another moment of just sheer individual brilliance. And whether it's the Getafe goal, whether it's the Bayern, that Bayern goal, whether it's the Copa del Rey final, dribble and strike against Bilbao, or you know, I think it's never ending with Messi. The joy that he brings, the fact that he makes us happy, and the fact that we were basically just. I know. Some of us wanted the best for Messi. We wanted him to find happiness or find some semblance of like, you know, really some stability, in the sense that he would have been like coached by Pep, and like he would have had or who would have been playing for a team that like really cared about him more than we than we did since 2015. So I think maybe we wanted that for him, for all the joy and for all the happiness and for all these for all those moments that we kind of like we were blessed to kind of like really experience as Barca fans. And we wanted the best for him at the end of the day. But I mean, still, I mean, the fact that he decided to stay really isn't really a bad thing in and of itself. And I mean, it's not really a sign of defeat. I think some aspects of this sort of like exit strategy was really poorly executed and poorly planned. But when you factor in the pandemic and everything that happened, really, I think the decision was not the decision when you think of it in broad terms. The decision was not made in the heat of the moment, but I think the execution was in the heat of the moment. So he waited. I think he decided. I think he took his decision after the Bayern battering, and I think that's when he said, "You know what? Screw it all. I want to leave, and I think I deserve to kind of like retire whilst playing, somewhere where I'm actually, enjoying my football rather than having to kind of like carry a dysfunctional team and just really, be the one who's making everything look nice and functional on the outside, but deep inside, it's still and will always be a mess until Bartomeu leaves. So yeah.
Interesting that you said about enjoying himself, because Messi has been pretty much the only thing that we Barcelona fans have enjoyed for the past 2 seasons. And it's even more absurd to realize that the man himself wasn't enjoying himself, but we were enjoying him. So yeah, that's quite strange, and it's a testament to his greatness, because most people have already forgotten, but Messi's performance in the Anfield season was one of his I would say his one of his top three greatest seasons, and the man only finished it with the league. It was quite unfair to him. So this kind of thing, it kind of stings, and it's the way that you're defeated. It's not defeat itself, because defeat is part of life. It's part of football. Messi knows this, and the best example around is easily the one the Chelsea defeat in 2012, where Barca were defeated. It was incredibly painful for each and every one of the fans, but still we had the entirety of the Camp Nou applauding the team, and that's exactly. And when I saw that day, I felt that it's exactly what I want to feel when I watch football. It's about knowing that your team gave their best, but it didn't work
Mhm.
out. It's part
Yes.
of football. It's part of everything. And when people say that, okay, Messi will go to Manchester City to win the Champions League, in which they never won, that's ridiculous. And I wouldn't say that. It's not about the Champions League. It's about Messi knowing that he is at a club that is completely focused on winning, and that defeat will come, of course, but it's one of the naturals of the sport. It's not something that it will happen inevitably, because that was the feeling against Bayern. We were actually expecting a defeat and even a thrashing,
Yes.
and we know what happened. So, guys, it's been nearly 30 minutes. This podcast was supposed to last only 30 minutes, but as I said before, we will this podcast will grow as we get more experience, and as I said before, I asked for patience, and apparently it's going to be better to discuss only a subject per podcast, but we will see. As promised, we will discuss all three subjects on this podcast. We will divide the segments into clips uploaded for YouTube, and that's it, guys. Ansu Fati, what's his future? What do we think about the player? Why he hasn't played as much as he should have for the past season? And that might seem quite crazy to say this, but Ansu didn't play enough last season. When we see a performance like he played versus Ukraine, the kid means business. He might be. I think it's clear by now that he will be. He's a generational talent. Let's not jump the gun and start putting him together with Mbappe. Absolutely not, and other players. I don't think that's even necessary. He's too young for that. But
I don't think it's even fair, I guess.
yeah, it's not fair, honestly. And what's really stung me as I watched the Ansu's highlights against Ukraine was the fact that his performance against Ukraine was better than any of the performances that he gave for Barcelona last season. And absolutely, it's not his fault. I think it's the club's fault. It's Bartomeu's fault, inevitably, because we had Valverde in a final season that it shouldn't have happened, and then we had Setien arriving at the mess of a club and not being able to make any changes, and he got completely crushed by the
Mhm.
board. And so what we see, because I was a big critic of Luis Enrique before, and he's a better coach than Setien or Valverde will ever be.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
what we are seeing, how Ansu played yesterday, yeah, that's a sign that under a good coach, Ansu will absolutely become a spectacular player, and it might be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic about that's I think that'll surprise many people, but I guess Lucho has had first-hand experience working with the Barcelona youth, so he's developed a few players when he was at the B team, and of course Lucho is a great one-to-one sort of like manager. He's very good at motivating his players, but of course, I mean, without remembering the final parts of his Barca spell, if we focus on the fact that he's quite good at galvanizing, his players, and he used to be like that when he was Barcelona captain. So it comes as no surprise that Ansu felt sort of liberated, and he was like sort of a lot more focused on the pitch versus Ukraine. And I feel like playing for Spain is actually I think it's slightly easier than playing for Barca, especially the fact that Ansu wasn't really necessarily in Valverde's plans earlier on in the in the 2019-2020 season, but of course due to injuries and suspensions, he was basically thrown into it. And I think his scoring against Osasuna in an away game that really sort of was the best sort of introduction, and it felt like with youngsters, with Barcelona youngsters, with the Masia youngsters, and I think back to that game when he scored. If he hadn't scored that game, I think if he had a run, then basically, people would say, oh, you know what, he's not good enough. But the fact that there is something to go with that alongside that performance, something quantifiable like a goal being scored or an assist, is actually really takes away from the brilliance of these youngsters. And really, it just. But I think Ansu was able to overcome a lot of these issues due to his strong personality. So he's very aggressive, and even on the ball, he's quite aggressive. He's quite assertive. and he plays with a purpose. Of course, like any youngster, like any 17-year-old, he's bound to make a lot of mistakes in possession. And of course, at times, these wannabe critics are sort of like magnifying and nitpicking, as if like Ansu is like really a developed player or a finished article. But when you compare Ansu to the second most or the third most expensive signing in the club's history, Osman Dembele, Ansu is really a much better decision maker. He's just he understands and interprets movement really well, and he knows how to get the better of defenders or get past defenders in one versus one situations. And still, the kid is still growing. He's only 17. So at this time, if you put him on a proper exercise regimen, and if he gains a little bit of mass and strength, he'd be a lot more better. And we're just really talking about him more in terms of raw talent now, as opposed to him being like sort of finished or the sort of finished article. And there's still a lot more to be had there. And one thing really that really also makes me optimistic is the fact that Koeman's had a really good track record of developing youngsters at Ajax. And for those who don't know, Koeman has basically introduced the likes of Abramovich, Maxwell, Vermaelen, Van der Vaart. I think he gave Schneider his debut at Ajax. So basically, the guy is really good at facilitating the transition from the sort of B team to the first team. So he's a great manager in that sense. Although tactically, I think I have my reservations with him, seeing as how he's basically bottled at Everton and Southampton. So basically, but still, he has a good record when it comes to developing players. And I feel like that's been a consistent sort of feature of his coaching, regardless of where he went. So I think that's one thing that makes me optimistic about Koeman.
Yes, I would say that Koeman's track record that bringing through players from the youth things is arguably his best asset as a coach alongside his leadership, because he's a very tough guy. He doesn't shy away from making the big decisions. So I'm honestly optimistic about that side of him. And getting back to Ansu, I would say that it's interesting that the club has already renewed him, but they were already working on another renewal, and that renewal simply stalled and disappeared. And we should be thankful that the pandemic has happened. I know this is ridiculous to say, but I'm saying only a sporting sense, that Ansu only has a 120 million clause when he was playing
Ridiculous.
for the B team. But now that he will be he registered as a first team player, his release clause is raised to 400 million, and that's quite a relief, because we have seen the reports that Manchester United were sniffing around for Ansu signing, and at the beginning I thought it was ridiculous because United right now don't have the money for Sancho, so how they could how they could get Ansu, who's even younger. It wouldn't make sense. But when you look at Ansu and what he did, I would say that the reports were more likely to have some kind of substance, or at least Manchester United were considering moving for him in the long term. And then came the news that Jorge Mendes is now Ansu's agent, and I was quite worried at the beginning, because you know how Mendes is. He's always going to be scrambling for his clients, but good for us to recall too that Mendes acts like a godfather to many of the younger players. He helped Cristiano a lot and many other players too, and he might be a good influence for Ansu. If Ansu, we all know that Ansu and his father love Spain, they love Barcelona, so I wouldn't say that there's a possibility that Ansu will simply go and leave, because his contract will last until 2024. So I wouldn't be worried about Ansu leaving right now. What I'm worried about is Ansu playing, because
Yeah.
most people have overlooked the fact that Depay, who's been linked with Barcelona and likely
Hmm.
coming, he plays on the he plays as a left-sided forward, so he would get in the way of Ansu, and that worries me greatly, especially when you consider that Koeman is asking for the pay himself. So that's a bit of a that's a big if on my book. That's a big worry, but we will have to see what happens. This kind of thing once again worries me greatly because Barca don't show any foresight, any sporting planning. I would say that any strong board that already doesn't have money would go to Koeman and say, Koeman, you're right. I know that Depay would be good for us, okay, but we have to trust more youth. We don't have the money, and Ansu is a real talent. And when
Yep.
it gets to the point where Ansu is starting for Spain, so yeah, people say about squad depth. I wouldn't say that squad depth is a problem to Barcelona if you look at the forward options that we have right now.
Oh yeah, we're pretty much stuck up front. Really, I mean, it's crazy. It's kind of like really, it's they're ignoring the fact that Ansu Fati is really, is really on a sort of upward trajectory in terms of his like development and like his performances and all that. And the kid is kind of like growing into it, and the transition is really has been difficult, but he's managed it. He's managed it really well, and he deserves all the plaudits for that. But the fact that the club's response is to think of, oh, Lautaro, Depay, that's really a big insult to Ansu. And really, I mean, I know that him leaving the club at the minute is not the most viable thing. But again, if I were Ansu, I would be thinking about my future. Really, I'd be saying, "Oh, you know what? I've had this amazing breakthrough season, and I'd be expecting to play more." Right? I mean, this is the only logical thing is to kind of like expect to play more in 20 in the upcoming season. So, of course, I mean, when you see that the club is being linked with Depay and Lautaro, I mean, it's just really makes you think that, oh, you know what am I gonna get the same minutes? Am I gonna be able to play more? Am I gonna and there's, of course, there's this sort of direct link between playing minutes, and developing. So how are you going to expect him to sort of develop and grow when he's not being played? And there was this missed potential last season when he was sort of when Ansu was breaking through. The fact that he wasn't being used as much, and he wasn't being played as frequently as we'd hoped. That really was a disappointment, and I think he's disappointed as well. But we'd expect him now to play more. So it doesn't make sense really to get Depay. But I mean, if you're going to get him basically to cover for Suarez, then that's a different issue. But again, where does that leave Griezmann? When does that leave Dembele? So basically, we've been promised a revolution, but we've seen very little to suggest that there's anything that's going to be like that's going to change. So yeah, we're back to I guess square one.
Yeah, I think that the best example of this was the match against Bayern last season. Always the Bayern match. We can't help it, but it's good for us to recall that Barca B were in the playoffs to be promoted to the second division, and Setien didn't allow Ansu and Puig to play against the two teams that Barca B were facing. I don't recall them exactly, but Barca B ended up knocked out, defeated in the final match of the playoffs. And we had the situation when the Bayern match came and Ansu didn't start or play, and Ricky Puig didn't play or start too. So you have the situation where these two players had everything to start versus Bayern. I don't care about, okay, how about our chances? Goddamn, guys, we we got trashed. Bayern scored 8 goals against us. So it couldn't have been worse. And Ansu had a lot of pace, and we saw how Bayern struggled against the little pace that Barca had. And the same thing could be said about Bayern in the final against PSG. So Ansu and Riqui Puig would have been much better to start against Bayern than those that started. I would say that Vidal starting that match was ridiculous. It didn't make sense.
Absolutely.
And looking back, it's that kind of thing that really stings because a young player and the fans too, because the young players know that they are doing their best. They are being, and if you went to Riqui Puig and asked him in a, well, of course behind closed doors, and if he was being honest, if he had a best, yeah, if he had a better performance than that Vidal and Rakitic that season, even Busquets, even better than Busquets, Ricky would have told you that he had. It's the same for Ansu. Yeah, it's the kind of thing that it's really hard to understand from a fan and sporting and player and any kind of standpoint. Really, it shouldn't have happened, but it happened. It was really frustrating.
You're listening to the 117 podcast.
And now let us speak about the third and final segment of the podcast. Okay, so Barcelona and transfers. So what's next for Barca? We have had links with Lautaro Martinez and Depay. Wijnaldum and a few links with Thiago too, but that's just wishful thinking, as we all know. Koeman apparently is having some degree of influence in the transfers. If he's asking for Dutch players and Dutch players are being linked, it might be lazy from the media too. We don't know, but Koeman is at least being given some leeway on how to select transfers because Valverde didn't have any leeway, and honestly, Lucho barely had any too. It was just Rakitic and that's it. And when he did, he actually chose Rakitic over Kroos. It's something that, okay, it ended well for us with a treble, but then when you look back, Kroos and Rakitic's careers, it kind of hurts, right? So we haven't been linked with any fullbacks. It's really strange because Jordi Alba is a wreck, Semedo is unreliable, and Sergio Roberto has basically lived his entire Barcelona career because of that goal versus PSG and that run to set up Messi in the Clásico. So, yeah.
I think Semedo is just really insisting on renewing his contract is really suspicious, if not downright stupid. Really just being caught between two, I would say really being forced to choose between Sergio Roberto and Semedo's it's just the equivalent of choosing your, I don't know, your favorite way to die, I guess. But aside from that, really look at PK, who's now 33, going 34. Longley, who's been a consistent. Who's been consistent in terms of like being a professional and whatnot. But again, to me, I think Longley isn't really the type of centre back I would go for if I had the choice. Jordi Alba, as you've said, he is just awful beyond measure. And what's next? We haven't seen anything really suggest that there will be anything or any incoming players, centre backs really, which we need so badly. And the fact that Umtiti is still at the club is a testament to our really abhorrent planning. And when you think of the fact that he was renewed, despite the fact that they had prior knowledge about his injury, just shows you how awful we are when it comes to planning. And that's the most basic stuff. So I don't expect PK to be replaced by anyone. I don't expect us to make any proper signings. I mean, Alaba's there, for God's sake. He is available, and we're just basically stalling. So and City are rumored to be interested in Semedo, but we're not offering him the way to kind of like as part of an exchange deal to get Cancelo. So it doesn't really seem to me that the defense is the focus of our planning. It's never been, I guess. It's always just the attack. Roma happened. Okay, let's buy. Let's get Griezmann and Malcolm or whoever, and then Anfield happened. We went after all these players. So it's just basically us reinforcing the attack over and over again, and there's no end to it really, and it just keeps failing. But we're somewhat insisting on that. I don't know why, but here we are, and I don't expect any changes to be made to the back line. So yeah, that puts us at a risk of being thrashed over and over again. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me really.
Yeah, honestly, the sporting planning has the club, as we said a dozen times, is completely nonsensical. It doesn't exist. And when you look at the planning about the links with the players that we had this summer, it's absolutely ludicrous. And honestly, if it was up to me to bring back to sign you Wijnaldum and Depay, I would actually don't I wouldn't sign any of these players. I would go all out for Upamecano. I would just spend the entire budget, that the entire small budget that we have for the summer on the guy, because we need better players at the back line. It's something that
I agree.
the board hasn't realized this, and we have known this for the past 3 years. So our fullbacks, we right now at the club, we don't have a single good fullback. It's that clear, because it's just a matter of watching them play, and maybe Manchester City was really interested in Semedo a few months ago, but now Cancelo is getting back on track. He's finally understanding what Pep wants from him, and he's actually playing well. So yeah, I would say that there's no way that Manchester City are going to swap Cancelo for Semedo, because Semedo isn't even half the player that Cancelo is. And I would
Yeah.
say that Cancelo is better going forward. He's better at crossing. He's better at finishing. He's a bit weaker than Semedo at defending, but he's actually improving his positioning, and he's getting better by the day. So yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. And it's the same for the centre backs. I'm really fond of Lenglet. He was one of the players that I wanted Barca to sign before they moved for him. So I was happy when he was brought in. But he's not. He's not. He needs a better partner, and he needs a quick. I wouldn't say a better partner, because PK is great at what he does on pitch, most of the time. So it's more of Lenglet needs a quicker partner, and maybe he would even he could even become a backup, depending on who he would sign as a centre back. But truth be told, I don't think that we are going to make any changes at our entire back line. We are likely going to bring in Wijnaldum and Depay, and that's really tough to say, because I want to say that these two Dutch players, they aren't bad, absolutely not. I would say that Depay is a decent player going forward. He's not world class, but he's played very well for Lyon. Even after that awful injury that he suffered, he was out for 200 days, and
Mhm.
he could actually bring Barca a bit going forward, but he would get in the way of Ansu, as we said, and other players too. And then you have Wijnaldum, which doesn't make much sense. Not that he's a bad player, but he's not a Barcelona type of player, and that's it goes back to that stuff that people say that Barca's possession based plan doesn't work anymore, and it's time to wake up. We haven't actually played with like we should have. We haven't planned like we should have to actually play the Barcelona way. It's been a long time. Lucho actually changed the way that we played, and from there on we had other changes, but we haven't played like the Barcelona way for a long time. And
Yep.
it's time for people to realize that. And Wijnaldum is exactly the kind of player that you bring if you don't want to play the Barcelona way ever again. Especially when you had Thiago available, I would say that 90% of us would like Thiago back at the club, and he deserves another chance. because he was pushed out. Let us recall that Tito stopped playing Thiago during the season for his release clause to stay low, to stay at 25 million. And then Bayern came calling with Guardiola, and he went. So we all watched how great that Thiago has played. That performance in the Champions League final was absolutely incredible, and he deserves another chance. So honestly, our summer is likely to be Wijnaldum and Depay, and that's it. We have lots of sales to make. We have the Umtiti situation, as FCB historian said, that honestly we can't get rid of him. He's actually dead weight, and Vidal and Suarez want to leave, but both of them are actually pushing the club to go there and actually pay their wages for the final season, or they won't leave. So we have this situation where the players have been mistreated by the club, and they're so frustrated at the way they're treated. They're actually making the bands to leave because they know that the club needs them to leave. It's quite an embarrassing situation for us, and there are many other players that are set to be pushed out. It's really a messy situation. So honestly, I wanted us to go for Thiago because he would be ideal to us, but backline signings take priority. And let's say when it comes to left backs, a player like Atalanta's Robin Gosens wouldn't be expensive. We could actually give another chance to Miranda, who was at Schalke and didn't go well, and we are trying to push Todibo out too when he has shown to be quite reliable when he played. It's all very tough to understand. So we are nearing the 1 hour mark of the podcast. It was supposed to last only half an hour, but the chat was really fantastic, and it was worth recording for all of this time. So guys, looking forward to recording more podcasts. Want to thank FCB historian to be here, and see you on social media. See you soon. Take care, guys.
See you soon, guys. Take care.
This was the 117 Podcast.